Hello learners, today we are going to talk about the present tense of IR ending verbs, the second group of verbs. So in the first video we did the ER ending verbs. Now in this we'll be talking about IR ending verbs. So this lecture includes the summary. This is the summary of the lecture. So this is the first part will be introduction. The second will be regular IR ending verbs. And third part would be irregular IR ending verbs. And there are subsections in this irregular IR ending verbs like dormir, which means to sleep, verbs like ouvrir, which means to open, and completely irregular verbs where you need to write a bit in present tense these verbs in order to remember their conjugations. So let's get started. Introduction. For the introduction, as discussed in the previous lesson, there are three groups of verbs in French. The first group is ER ending verb. The second is IR ending verb that we will be talking about today. And the third group is RE ending verb. So we'll have another lecture on this RE ending verbs. But in this lecture, we'll be talking about IR ending verbs only. In the previous lessons, you have learned about ER ending verbs. So this lesson covers IR ending verbs. The second group composed of regular and irregular verbs. I'm talking about regular and irregular, that is, there is a fixed pattern in regular verbs. So they will have a fixed ending. But for other IR ending verbs, it will not be fixed. So you have to memorize them with regular practice. It needs practice. Okay, so regular IR ending verbs. To conjugate a regular IR ending verb, remove the infinitive ending IR. So suppose there is a verb like finir that we will do in the next example. So you have to remove IR of that verb. In ER ending verb, we used to remove ER of that verb. We will be removing IR of the verb here. Okay, and these are the endings on the screen as you can see. In the first person, in singular part with je, the ending is is. So remove ir and put is. Then with tu, the second person singular is again the same ending is. But in third person singular, that becomes it. Remember. So if you remember that endings s, and t, social studies, then it will be like key for you to remember the endings. So you will never get confused what to do, what to write when. Some of the times the students, they get confused and they write it with je. No, that's a mistake then. With nu, that is in plural person, the first person, the ending is ISSONS. Remember ISSONS. With vu, the ending is ISSEZ. ISSEZ. That's there on the screen right now. Il and L, the ending is ISSENT. Remember this. So we'll be conjugating the regular verbs now. So there is a group of regular IR ending verbs also. And they will have this same ending. We will not deviate from this one. Okay. So in the next slide, I will show you the verb. So for example, we have a verb called as finir. Finir. Finir is to finish or to end. So first of all, we will remove IR of this verb. After the removal of IR, we have this FIN. And now we will be putting this FIN with the endings. So we will add the appropriate endings. So now we will have this conjugation after adding the verb finir, which is to finish or to end. So it is conjugated as je finis in first person. Je finis. Je finis is I finish or I'm finishing. Tu finis. Il finit. Elle finit. On finit. The same pronunciation. Mind the pronunciation, though we are writing it differently, but the pronunciation is same. Je finis, tu finis, il finit, elle finit. But when it will be in plural part, that will be nous finissons. Nous finissons. ISSONS will be pronounced as nous finissons. Vous finissez. Vous finissez. Vous finissez. Nous finissons. We finish or we finish. Nous finissons. We finish or we are finishing. Vous finissez is you finish or you are finishing. Ils finissent means they finish or they are finishing. Okay. So je finis, tu finis, il, elle finit. The left hand part, the pronunciation is same. So we will have this rule for regular IR ending verbs. Now I'll give you the list of regular IR ending verbs so that you can practice it later at home and conjugate in present tense. So the verbs like finir are choisir. Choisir, to choose. So how will you conjugate with je? It will be je choisis. Je choisis. Tu choisis. Il, elle choisit. Nous choisissons. Vous choisissez. Ils choisissent. Elles choisissent. All right. So the verbs, other verbs like choisir, we have réussir, which is to succeed. Réfléchir, which is to think or to reflect. Grossir is to put on weight or to get fat. Maigrir, to lose weight or to get thin. So I hope you will conjugate these IR ending verbs. And if you'll have any confusion, any query, you can put it in the comment section. So choisir, réussir, réfléchir, grossir, and maigrir. Now we'll move to the next category of IR ending verbs, which will be irregular ones. So note, these verbs are called verbs in issant, like finissant. As the first person is plural, ending is always issant. So nous finissons. When we will make it, when we will write the conjugation in present tense, it will be in nous finissons, as we saw. Do you remember this rule is as it will help you to distinguish between regular and irregular verbs in IR ending verbs. So you know very well the rule, the endings for regular verbs. Now we'll be talking about the irregular ones. Note, je finis, tu finis, il, elle finit are pronounced the same as I told you. There will be no change in pronunciation. So the times they pronounce it as je finis, tu finis, il, elle finit. No, this is French, and you have to abide the rule of the pronunciation. So this will be pronounced as je finis, tu finis, il, elle finit. That S, S, and T will be silent. In other words, the final S and T are silent, as I told you. So this rule applies to all the verbs in previous slides and those similar to them. So these are not only the verbs that we did in the previous slide, 5, 6 verbs. There are other regular verbs. So I will also put that in the comment section if you need, and you can practice those verbs at home. Now the irregular IR ending verbs. So there are some categories of this irregular verbs. So the first category of IR ending verbs, the irregular ones, is the verbs like dormir. Dormir, which is to sleep. And the second category is like the verbs ouvrir. So these are the different categories of IR ending verbs in irregular ones. And the third category is completely irregular, like pouvoir, which is to be able to, can, or venir, which means to come or to come from. So in the third category, this completely irregular verbs, you have to write it. You have to write it a bit in order to remember, but the irregular verbs are very difficult. I don't want to say whether these verbs are difficult, but you practice those verbs. If you write it a number of times, then it will be very easy for you to remember them. So write as much as you can. Okay, so we'll see the first category of the verbs which are like dormir. So there is a fixed pattern for this verb dormir also. IR ending verbs. The first group of irregular IR ending verbs include like the verb dormir, which means to sleep, mentir, which is to lie, partir, to leave, sentir, which means to feel, and sortir, which means to go out. And all the other derivations like partir, which means to leave, repartir is to leave again. So they will have the same conjugation, same type of conjugation. So like the verb partir, we have added re just before that partir. So the conjugation will have this re also, including that partir. So if you know partir, then you can also do repartir. Then it will not be a problem for you. But you have to divide these verbs in two type of conjugations. In left hand side, in singular, it will be similar. In right hand side, it will be different. I will show you now. See here, the endings of this type of verb like dormir, you have to remember this. S, S, and T, ONS, EZ, and ENT. Now the first thing you have to do here with the verbs like dormir is that you have to remove IR. The first two steps to conjugate the verbs are here. So in the singular part, you have to remove IR, like MIR. So dormir, it will be only the DOR. And as you know, the endings S, S, and T. Now we'll be adding that here. You can see, je dors, tu dors, il dort, I sleep, or I'm sleeping. Tu dors, you sleep or you are sleeping. Il dort, he sleeps or he's sleeping. Elle dort, she sleeps or she is sleeping. Now it becomes nous dormons. That dormir verb, we have removed IR now. The intact part is DORM. And this ONS, EZ, and ENT you have to remember. So je dors, tu dors, il, elle dort, nous dormons, vous dormez, ils dorment, and elles dorment. So this is the pattern that we will follow for the verbs like dormir. Okay. Now the second group of verbs in irregular section, there'll be verbs like ouvrir, découvrir, cueillir, offrir, and souffrir. These verbs will not follow the rule of IR ending verb. These verbs will follow the rule of ER ending verbs. Yes, I'm not joking yet. They will follow the rule of ER ending verbs. I will show you. So the verbs like découvrir or redécouvrir, to rediscover, that is the same thing like partir and repartir. You have to add just re before the conjugation. So as I told you that it follows the pattern of ER ending verbs. So remember the verb parler and this rule of ER ending verbs, E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, and ENT. So I hope you remember this ER ending verbs rule. But we will be using these ER ending verbs rule for the verb ouvrir and other verbs like in the group of the verb ouvrir. So we will remove IR of this verb, and the remaining thing we will have is ouvre, OUVR. And now we will add. So the conjugation will look like this. J'ouvre, tu ouvres, il, elle, on ouvre, nous ouvrons. Why nous ouvrons? Because there is a liaison between nous and ouvrons, which is pronounced as nous ouvrons. Vous ouvrez, ils ouvrent, elles ouvrent. J'ouvre, tu ouvres, il, elle ouvre, nous ouvrons, vous ouvrez, ils ouvrent, and elles ouvrent. So you can see here that it is following the rule of ER ending verbs. And similarly, we will do with other verbs, like here we have as découvrir, cueillir, offrir, and souffrir. So I hope you will conjugate these verbs also. I will put other verbs which are like the verb ouvrir in the comment section so that you can conjugate and you can be at ease in the terms of conjugation. So there are some verbs which are completely different, as I told you initially. So the verbs like pouvoir, which is to be able to or can, and the verb venir, which is to come or to come from, do not follow any pattern. So you must learn each conjugations separately. Okay. So you have to write it in your notebook and then write it in a rough copy somewhere. The numbers, these verbs 10 times. That is the only key to remember. So the verbs like asseoir, ouvrir, courir, which is to run, asseoir, which is to sit, devoir, to have to or to owe, falloir, to be necessary, mourir, to die, pleuvoir, to rain, recevoir, to receive, savoir, to know, tenir, which is to hold, valoir, to be worth, venir, which is to come, and voir means to see. So these verbs will have a different conjugation. So I'll make a different video. I'll make a video for these verbs, these type of verbs, and the pronunciation part for these verbs is very important. The pronunciation of these verbs in present tense or in any other tense is a very important aspect. So don't miss that. It is very important. So let's start by learning pouvoir or valoir and vouloir. So the conjugation will be like this. So this is just the introduction, the introductory conjugation of this verb. We will do these verbs in details later. So that's all for today. We will come up with the next video on some other topic. Till then, c'est tout pour aujourd'hui. Au revoir. Merci.